Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're immersing ourselves in the ideas of Mikkel Lizarald, someone who describes himself as a channel between the living and the dead.
Yeah, we're using a study guide based on his book, I Am a Channel Between the Living and the Dead, to really explore his unique perspective on mediumship.
So our mission for this dive is basically to understand how Lizarald sees the spiritual world, what he thinks his gifts actually are, and the ethics around being a medium.
Right. We're looking to pull out the most important, maybe even the most surprising ideas from his viewpoint, trying to really get a handle on it.
And just to get you thinking right from the start, is it really possible to communicate with the quote-unquote beyond?
Yeah.
We'll be digging into that fascinating question through Lizarald's lens.
Okay, so where should we begin? There's a lot to unpack.
Well, one idea that really jumped out at me, quite frankly, was his concept of evil, or rather the lack of it in the spirit world. He says it just doesn't exist there.
Exactly. That's a pretty bold claim, isn't it? Lizarald suggests evil is purely a human construct. He's quite firm on this.
So, on the other side, as he calls it, what is there then?
Just unconditional love. That's his core message about the spirit realm. It really flies in the face of popular ideas about, ghosts or malevolent entities.
It really does. It makes you rethink all those scary stories. If it's all love, how does that account for negative experiences people sometimes report? Does he touch on that?
That's a great question. It definitely challenges assumptions. His focus seems to be on the inherent nature of that realm being love, perhaps implying that negative perceptions are filtered through human fear or misunderstanding. But his main point is the absence of inherent malice over there.
Interesting. Okay, shifting gears a bit. His own path wasn't straightforward, right? He didn't start out wanting to be a medium. He was studying journalism.
That's right. He was actually in his third year of journalism studies. But he hit a rough patch: depression, lack of motivation, just feeling deeply unsatisfied with it all.
And that's when the mediumship stuff started coming in.
Sort of nascently, yeah. He felt that the initial mediumship consultations he was starting to do, those were the things that actually felt fulfilling, gave him a sense of purpose. It was a pretty drastic change of direction.
No kidding. And his early experiences connecting, they were a bit unusual. He started out saying he read cards, but that wasn't the full picture.
Right, that's fascinating. He said he was reading the Spanish deck, tarot cards. But he admits that, in reality, he was getting direct perceptions.
Like what? What kind of perception?
He describes seeing people, actual visions, names popping into his head, strong feelings or sensations. It sounds like his mediumistic ability was just there, innate, intuitive, very different from learning tarot symbolism.
Huh. So the cards were almost a cover?
Kinda. He basically says he started using tarot as a more socially acceptable way to present these spiritual perceptions.
Made it less scary for people than saying, I'm getting messages from the dead.
Exactly. Less intimidating. And he also mentions it was a form of personal protection for him too, a way to ease into sharing these communications.
Makes sense. Soften the landing, so to speak. Now, he has this interesting point about how the intuitive mind works. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, this is quite relatable, I think. Lizaraldi suggests our rational mind needs to be occupied with automatic tasks, things we do without much conscious thought for the intuitive side to surface more easily.
Like doing the dishes or?
Precisely. Washing dishes, ironing, even shampooing your hair in the shower. Those moments when your conscious brain kind of relaxes, that's often when ideas or solutions just pop up seemingly out of nowhere. You probably experienced that, right?
Oh, absolutely. All the time. Totally true. Okay, so how does he draw the line between a medium and, say, a psychic or a fortune teller? We often use those terms interchangeably.
Yeah, and for Lizarald, that distinction is absolutely crucial. A medium, in his view, acts as a channel, a bridge between the living and the dead. The primary goal is bringing peace, comfort, helping people find closure.
Okay, channel for peace. And the psychic or fortune teller?
He sees them as focusing more on trying to divine or guess general characteristics, maybe predict future events, often without that direct connection to spirits providing the information, and not necessarily focused on that emotional closure. The emphasis is different.
Right. One is bridging worlds for healing, the other is more about prediction or general insights.
You got it. And he even talks about two different planes within that broader world of divination, a horizontal and a vertical plane.
Okay, tell me about those. Horizontal first.
The horizontal plane, as he describes it, covers things like psychic readings, seeing auras, clairvoyance basically, getting information through extrasensory means, but without direct spirit intervention. Like a clairvoyant might sense where a lost object is.
I see. And the vertical plane?
That's where true mediumship comes in, according to him. Information and messages come directly from spirits or spiritual guides. So a medium on this plane would relay a specific message from a deceased loved one. And he sees mediumship as encompassing clairvoyance, by the way.
Got it.
Vertical involves spirits, horizontal is more psychic faculty-based. Okay, now there's a very personal event mentioned, the passing of his brother. How did he experience that, given his abilities? Did he have a premonition?
Interestingly, he says he doesn't recall having a clear, specific premonition about his brother's sudden death.
Really?
Yeah, but he does recount waking up right around the time his brother passed away, feeling a strong urge to go and see him. The days after were, naturally, filled with immense confusion and trauma.
So even with his abilities, the human pain and shock were still overwhelming.
Absolutely. It really highlights that being a medium doesn't make you immune to grief or the complexities of loss.
Makes sense. And during this period, a key figure emerged for him, Marilyn Rossner. Who was she?
Ah, yes. Marilyn Rossner. She was a significant Canadian medium who played a really pivotal role in his journey. She recognized his gift, which he says was still quite undeveloped at the time.
And she helped him. She invited him to her center in Canada for about 2.5 years, mentored him, helped him hone his abilities, understand them better. She was fundamental to his development as a medium.
Wow, that sounds like a crucial encounter, like a real turning point.
Definitely seems like it.
So, moving on to the actual practice of mediumship, Lizzarald puts a lot of weight on ethics, doesn't he? What are the main principles he stresses?
He's very strong on this. For him, the messages a medium relays must be rigorous. They need to contain verifiable evidence. Specific details that allow the person receiving the message to know who is communicating.
So things only they or the deceased would know.
Exactly. The primary goal must always be to bring peace, comfort, and help close cycles of grief. He's quite critical of vague, general messages that could apply to anyone, seeing them as potentially exploitative of people's vulnerability.
Yeah, that ethical grounding seems vital. He also mentions something about not asking questions beforehand, to avoid contaminating the message.
Yes, that's another key point for him. He emphasizes that the medium shouldn't probe the client for details about the deceased person before the connection attempt.
Why is that so important?
To avoid biasing or influencing the information the medium receives. He sees the reception process as intuitive, often unexpected. Maintaining the purity of that reception is vital for the message's authenticity. Like tuning a radio interference distorts the signal.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I gather his own emotional state plays a role too. His ability fluctuates.
He acknowledges that directly. His emotional well-being impacts his ability to connect clearly. If he's feeling disturbed or negative, it's harder to establish that strong link.
And the practice itself has affected his own healing.
Yes, he suggests it's been part of his own personal healing journey, which shows a really deep interconnection between his gift and his overall well-being. It's not just something he does, it's part of who he is.
It sounds like a very integrated experience.
Yeah.
So wrapping up this section, that emphasis on responsibility and ethics really stands out.
It does. Lizzarald consistently stresses the need for proper training, ongoing personal work, and a strong ethical commitment from anyone practicing mediumship. He's critical of those who operate irresponsibly, especially given how vulnerable people often are when seeking this kind of connection.
Right. Responsibility is paramount. And just to make sure we're all clear on the terms, maybe we can quickly recap some key definitions he uses.
Good idea. So, mediumship is that ability to be a channel between the living and the dead. A spirit is the consciousness or essence of the deceased. Clairvoyance is getting information extrasensorily without spirits necessarily being involved.
And the psychic, or fortune teller, adivino in his terms, focuses more on general prediction, distinct from the medium's role.
Exactly. Then there are the horizontal and vertical planes distinguishing psychic info from spirit communication. And crucially, evidence that verifiable information that validates the mediumistic connection.
Perfect. That helps solidify things. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground exploring Lizzarald's perspective. So just to summarize as we wrap up, what are the absolute core takeaways from his view?
I'd say fundamentally it's this vision of a spirit world devoid of malice, governed purely by unconditional love. Then that very clear critical distinction between a medium's role bringing peace via connection and that of a psychic or fortune teller.
And the emphasis on proof.
Absolutely. The insistence on concrete, verifiable evidence in messages. And finally, the essential role of intuition, both in the medium's process and potentially in all of us.
And for you listening, Lizaral's unique perspective really invites you to reflect, doesn't it? To think about your own understanding of life, death, and that possibility of connection beyond the physical.
Yeah, maybe it makes you reconsider your own intuition, those hunches or gut feelings that seem to come out of nowhere. How do you process that kind of information?
And it leads to a final thought, really. If evil is just a human construct, as he suggests, and the other side is only love, how might that change how we view this life?
Right. How might it impact how we remember and feel connected to those who've passed on? What could that mean for how we understand grief, loss, and maybe even our own spiritual connection?
Something to definitely ponder. We encourage you to keep exploring these ideas, see how they resonate with you personally, maybe look into mediumship further, consider different viewpoints on the spirit world, and form your own understanding.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.